Hello, we Dayangku Siti Nazira binti Awangku Muhammad Shah, Hafsah binti Samsudin and Nur Atira binti Shahrul Nizan. We will present on a topic, the counsellor as a person and as a professional. Let's begin. I am Hafsah binti Samsudin. Will bring you to the introduction. We would like to let everyone to understand what are the definitions of the counsellor as a person and as a professional. What do we actually understand with the term a counsellor as a person? In general, a person is defined as an individual human being who has feelings, emotions, and reactions. Meanwhile, a counsellor is a person who has been qualified to listen to people and provide advices on their concerns, as well as a person whose job is to provide advices to people who need it, especially on personal issues. This is according to Cambridge Dictionary and Collins Dictionary. To combine both, a counsellor as a person is a human being who is qualified to listen to people and provide proper advices accordingly. What about counsellor as a professional? According to Cambridge Dictionary, a professional counsellor is someone who has been qualified to listen to people who have issues or who wish to achieve something and provide them with expert advices. Also, according to American Counseling Association, or known as ACA, a professional counselor or counseling is a professional engagement relationship that helps clients, families, and communities with their mental health, well-being, education, and job motivations. Counselors interact with clients to develop techniques for overcoming difficulties and personal problems. We could also understand that the counselor as a professional as a person who is qualified to listen to people who have issues and being professional with it, whereby the counselor adheres to the ethical conduct provided by the associations. To understand better, let's take a look at a video clip on a day in the life of a counselor. It will only take you about a minute and 35 seconds.
My name's Lisa Menzel and I'm a counsellor and I work in my own practice called Well Within Counselling. So within a 1 hour session, there's a few key stages that we need to work through, and the first one is to allow for the client to open up and talk about what they're presenting with. Some clients are really happy to open up and sometimes other clients are a little bit more reserved. I might change things up a little bit by getting out my strengths cards, and that really breaks up the session. I think a good counsellor is someone who is authentic and genuine and able to build a relationship really quickly. Every year I update my skills to just stay in touch with new and emerging research. Some of the areas that a counsellor might work in is in the community services field or the education sector, or working privately and working with issues such as substance use or family conflict, family breakdown. Hearing some sad stories day in, day out can take its toll on a person. It's important as a counsellor to debrief with my supervisor or a colleague so that we then don't take those issues home. It's important for me to really empower the client and for them to leave the session feeling like that they've achieved something. It's one of my own strengths as a person. I like to help people.
Next, we will take a peek at professionalism and ethics in psychology. We will let you have a brief explanation about it before we proceed with a better understanding on the topic which has been mentioned previously. Let's have a brief understanding about it. Ethics refers to the established code of ethics founded on a collection of professional standards and reasonable decision-making when it comes to a professional conduct. The ethical standards that define the discipline are expressed by ethics. In psychology, the American Psychological Association's ethical principles and code of conduct include sections on professional practice, education, research, and publications. The ethical principles and code of conduct for psychologists of the American Psychological Association, or known as APA, provides a basic set of principles and criteria on which psychologists' ethical and scientific practice is based. Its aims are the well-being and protection of the client and organizations in which psychologists interact, as well as the enlightenment of members, students, and the general public about the discipline's ethical standards. Here are the references on guidelines of ethics, which are known as ACA and APA. They are widely used around the globe. It is important to understand that the American Counseling Association has established a code of ethics to help protect clients, counselors, and society at large. American Counseling Association's mission is to improve society's quality of life by encouraging competent counselor development, advancing the counseling field, and using the counseling profession and experiences to foster respect for human integrity and diversity. The six primary objectives of the Code of Ethics are: the code outlines the ethical responsibility of ACA members and offers guidelines to help licensed counselors work ethically. The code outlines legal concerns that professional counselors and counselors in training should be aware of. The code allows the organization to explain the essence of the ethical obligations shared by its members for existing and prospective members, as well as those represented by members. The code acts as an ethical guide to help members develop a plan of action that ideally serves those who need counseling services and set standards of behavior with a focus on the position of the licensed counselor. The code makes a significant contribution to the ACA's mission. The code's guidelines act as the foundation for dealing with ACA members' inquiries and ethical concerns. The ACA Code of Ethics is divided into 9 segments that cover the following topics, which are the counseling relationship, confidentiality and privacy, professional responsibility, relationships with other professionals, evaluation, assessment and interpretations, supervision, training and teaching, research and publication, distance counseling, technology and social media, lastly, resolving ethical issues. Next, as of the APA, or known as American Psychological Associations, which almost similar to ACA, the ethical principles of psychologists and code of conduct, hereafter referred to as the Ethics Code of the American Psychological Associations, consists of an introduction, a preamble, 5 general principles, and basic ethical standards. While the implementation of an ethical standards can vary depending on the situations, the majority of the ethical standards are written broadly in order to refer to psychologists in a variety of positions. The absence of an ethical standard that expressly addresses a particular action does not imply that it is automatically ethical or unethical. The Ethics Code is designed to provide guidelines and principles of ethical practice for psychologists that can be enforced by the APA and all organizations that wish to follow them. The Ethics Code is not meant to be seen as a justification for legal actions. Whether or not a psychologist or counselor has violated the ethics code standards does not decide whether or not they are criminally liable in a court of law, whether a contract is enforceable, or whether or not any legal impacts appears. We will understand better on these after the explanations that will be provided by our other two presenters.
Next is ethical issues. In most cases, the counselor is responsible for ethical issues in therapy. This suggests that it is the duty of the counselor to prevent unethical encounters with clients. Some ethical issues that counselors may face are as follows. Situation 1 shows when religion or bias factor comes in place. Client A has a problem with his partner and wanted to solve it via couple counseling. Client A is gay. What should a counselor do if his or her belief or bias is against the client's status? The answer should be the counselor should acknowledge their differences and refer the client to another counselor, which has the same belief or bias as the client. Situation 2 shows when cultural factors comes in place. Client B, who is Asian, went in for counseling as she has depression. One of her concerns is what other people think when she tells them that she has depression, especially her family members, as she knows that they would just dismiss her mental health issues. The counselor that she was appointed with is an American. What should the counselor do when he or she realizes that they have cultural differences? The answer is similar to situation 1. Since American culture is individualistic culture, while Asian cultures are collectivistic culture, the counselor should acknowledge their differences and refer the client to another counselor which has the same culture as the client or understands the client's culture. These two are just one of many factors that a counselor may encounter. Other factors that a counselor may encounter are spiritual factors, gender factors, and sexual orientation. Therefore, it is important for counselors to be aware of their own characters as a person when encountering with a client. Besides that, here are a few things that counselors should be aware of. Number 1, their own biases, denial, and unresolved conflicts. An example for unresolved conflict is when the counselor himself or herself has personal problems that he or she could not solve. In this situation, the counselor should not counsel others to avoid transference and counter-transference. As a counselor, it is important to be aware on not having any transference and counter-transference issues with clients. Number 2, feeling the need to tell client on what to do. Counselors should not tell client what to do to avoid dependency of the client to the counselor. Counselors, instead, should harness client's sense of personal autonomy. Number 3, having a strong feeling to resolve client's issues. Number 4, the needs to be perfect and able to have solution on every client's problems. Number 5, having felt to have an unethical relationship with client. All this can be avoided by practicing on having a strict legal attitude towards the client. It is also best for both the counselor and the client. Besides that, boundaries are also one of the most important things in a professional relationship, such as a counselor to a client, as clients are safeguarded by boundaries. Boundaries seek to minimize the possibility of emotional damage and remove dual relationships, while honoring and respecting the client's autonomy. Number 6, showing owns burnout during session. Number 7, having impairment in front of client or during session. For number 6 and 7, if the counselor is having a burnout, it is best to cancel the upcoming meeting with the client and reschedule the meet to a later time, whenever the counselor is ready. Because you cannot counsel people in a state where you yourself are not in the best state, as it will only create problems later. Next is counselor as a professional. Counselors as a professional should adhere to these characteristics. Number 1, counseling style. A good counselor will tailor fit their treatment plan for each of their clients. Counselors cannot use the one-size-fits-all approach as each client is different. Number 2, objective. A good counselor would not stray away from the main objective of the counseling sessions with the clients. Counselors should keep track of the client's goal each time they have finished a session. Number 3, competent. Number 4, trustworthy. Counselors must be able to demonstrate their trustworthiness both verbally and non-verbally, as clients must be at ease sharing personal, sensitive details and aspects of themselves that are often unknown to others. A stronger bond with the counselor results from trusting the consistency of the relationship and the confidentiality of what is shared. Number 5, interpersonal skills. Interpersonal skills includes pragmatism, competence, respect, genuineness, promotion of client empowerment, and self-responsibility. Counselors should be able to communicate and express themselves clearly and effectively with clients. They can show their genuineness by showing sincere interest in the welfare of others and having the ability and willingness to be present in clients' joy or pain. This interpersonal skill can be harnessed and improved with emotional intelligence exercise. Last but not least, number 6, effective helpers. Effective helpers includes self-awareness, psychological health, sensitivity to racial, ethnic, and cultural factors, and of course, open-mindedness. It is important for the counselor to be educated in sensitive issues such as race, ethnicity, culture, etc. Counselors should also acknowledge and respect differences in belief and attitudes of clients.
Assalamualaikum and good day to Dr. Asong and everyone. My name is Dayang and I'll be continuing my presentation on the next slide, where we'll be discussing on how to be a better counselor and what are the implications are. To refresh, a counseling requires a process and interaction between a counselor and a client and is intended to assist others in making better decisions or choices in their lives, or simply words to act as a guide to them. So there are a lot of strategies on how to be a good counselor, and here are some of it in the slide. Let's take a look at the first point, is to practice on having legal ethics when having sessions with clients. When we talk about legal ethics, a counselor should know the Aca Codes of Ethics, which is a guidelines for the counselor when conducting a counseling session. For example, one of the Aca codes is B.1, respecting clients' rights, under subtopic B.1.A, a multicultural diversity considerations, under section B, confidentiality and privacy. In these codes, the counselor must be mindful of and sensitive to cultural meanings of confidentiality and privacy, as well as respect different viewpoints on information disclosure. Furthermore, knowing and adhering to ethical codes is essential for counselor, since the codes would assist them in conducting professional counseling sessions. And the second strategy, as described and explained by Atira in the previous slide, is to maintain a professional characteristics during sessions. In the life of counselor, adherence to this ethical characteristic is critical and essential, since it is the basis of the good practice and a better counselor. And the third strategy is to get professionals to help themselves. In this sense, a counselor may face a tough situation in sessions. Thus, honesty encourages a counselor to ask for a referral for another experienced counselor that may be a perfect replacement for the area's expertise. For example, Ali is a counselor that specializes in a marriage context. However, the client is having issues with mental health. Therefore, Ali asks for a referral for another professional counselor to assist the clients. And the fourth strategy is not doing any sessions with clients when counselor is having burnout or personal issue. This is due to the fact that a counselor may not be performing at their best and may be mentally and emotionally unstable. Furthermore, this is to prevent any potential harm during the sessions, such as the counselor saying something harsh that is not intended for the client. And the second last is go for personal therapy when it is needed. Counselors or therapists are like other people, human beings who deal with problems such as fear, anxiety, stress, and other issues that can be addressed during a therapy sessions. It is important for the counselor to process their own issues and seek counseling when necessary so that they do not negatively affect their clients. For example, Dr. Aaron Stiebeck's cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT) is often used in managing stress. And the last point is quite similar from the previous one, having a me time or breaks from any session occasionally. This is because when a counselor overworks endless counseling session, a counselor could be attached with the problems of the clients and can lead to burnout, stress, physically and emotionally tired. And me time here means a counselor have their own enjoyment, hobbies, relaxing activities other than work related. It is a time to oneself, for example, shopping for a new outfit. Moving on with the implications of counseling. So there are 5 things counselors should take this into considerations. The first one, be convincing and can be trusted. When the first time clients attend a counseling sessions, they will be worried for the first session because it seems that the client is seeing a total stranger and also having to discuss their deepest and most personal issues. So counselors should keep this in mind and do their best to put the clients at ease. And the second one is confidentiality and privacy. Counselors are well aware that people's problems are extremely private. However, a client represents a large risk by revealing their issues to another person. Keep in mind, however, that qualified counselors are very much in making their clients feel comfortable enough to speak openly about whatever is on their minds. And the third one is counseling session is important to clients. A counselor are in the privileged positions of engaging with clients who come to them seeking counseling in changing their life. This is awareness of just how essential this is for the clients and what it represents, which means why counseling and counselor exist. And the fourth one is the use of codes ethics enhance the quality of their practice. Instead of structuring their own practice, a counselor should think about their approach to treating clients in a structured way to prevent malpractice issues. And the last one is professional knowledge and understand their personal values. So what are the skills knowledge a counselor must take this into considerations? A counselor needs excellent communication skills to effectively communicate with a range of clients, as well as knowledge of codes of ethics, patience, sensitivity, knowledge of the laws and regulations, emotional stability, truthfulness, and problem-solving skills. By gaining all this knowledge and more in advance, counselor will have a better understanding of their own goals and purposes in the counseling career path. So, on the next slide is the conclusion of our presentations today by our members.
As a conclusion on this topic of the counselor as a person and as a professional, we could clearly understand from what has been mentioned by another 2 presenters. There are few current ethical issues that may happen to any counselor in practice, yet it does not mean that they are unavoidable. Ethically, as a professional counselor, whenever it comes to facing any issues, there are guidelines that need to be addressed by the counselor to adhere to. There are strategies that have been highlighted by my fellow presenter on how to be a better counselor as a person and as a professional. It has to be practiced in order to be one. Finally, it's critical that you understand the intent of the Code of Ethics as well as each part as you progress on being a counselor. Knowing the Code of Ethics will assist you in planning and executing your practice as a counselor in an honorable and beyond reproach manner. In your job as a counselor, you should always have a Code of Ethics on hand, and you should check it on a daily basis. You should also be mindful of any updates or modifications that could have an effect on the way you work as a counselor. We will end this presentation with a video that portrays what does it take to be a successful counselor as a professional.
I picked up the phone and I heard a girl on the other line sobbing, and then she told me that she was pregnant and she was 16 and she was really, really scared.
I got a call from a young person, roughly 13 years old, that had lost 7 of his friends to suicide. And it didn't take long in the conversation to find out that he was having thoughts of suicide himself.
So the phone rings, and it's a young man who's about 14 years old. And he started to describe some of his experiences with bullying. People getting pushed into lockers, people getting called names, and even people sending text messages, emails, and using technology to bully another person.
The reason why she was so afraid was because her mom had told her over and over, don't come and tell me that you're pregnant at 16, because her mom had also gotten pregnant with her when she was 16.
Talking with me for a while opened things up for him. Got to talk about these memories, talked about his strengths, talked about his courage and everything that it takes to face this.
I asked, so have you ever experienced bullying? Because it sounds like you've noticed a lot. And he said, well, yeah, I have, but I wasn't bullied. I was the bully.
The more that we talked, she realized that her mom didn't want her to go through the same struggles that she went through. By the end of the call, she decided to talk to her mom.
He started to talk about ideas with regards to speaking to the person who he was bullying, trying to find a way to reconcile with that person, even find forgiveness from that person.
A lot changed within the person from the beginning of the call to where it was at the end. He just felt like he had found some reasons to stick around and wanted to live.
What everyone thinks and feels is valid, and they deserve an opportunity to be heard.